Most people think creativity is a gift, something you either have or you don't. But here's the shocking truth. 95% of people are born with the same level of creativity. So why do some people seem effortlessly creative while others struggle? It's not about natural talent. The real difference is how we handle failure, fear, and the pressure of judgment. In this video, we'll dive into why most creative people are afraid to fail and what they can do about it. We'll break down some surprising facts, share real-life examples, and uncover strategies that can unlock your creative potential. Stick around, and let's transform the way you think about creativity. Chapter 1. The myth of effortless creativity. Many people believe creativity is something that just comes to certain people naturally. But that's not the case. Creativity, just like any skill, takes practice and effort. We've all seen those viral videos of people who seem to create masterpieces effortlessly, but those moments are often the result of hours or years of practice. The idea that creativity should flow easily can set us up for failure when we hit a roadblock. In reality, even the most creative people face challenges and struggle. The misconception of effortless creativity often makes us feel like something is wrong when we can't come up with ideas instantly. In truth, many creators have off days or periods where nothing seems to work. A famous example is Picasso. While we associate him with groundbreaking art, Picasso faced years of uncertainty and rejection before gaining recognition. If he had given up during his early struggles, the world would have never seen his incredible work. One thing creative people often fail to realize is that creativity is a skill, not a magical gift. It's built through constant practice, failure, and learning. Think about athletes who train every day. They don't rely on raw talent alone. They train to enhance their natural abilities. Creativity works the same way. If you're not feeling inspired, don't worry. That's completely normal. Author and creativity expert Austin Kleon says it best: if you're waiting for inspiration, you're not going to get anything done. The key is to get started, even when you're not feeling it. As you keep working, new ideas will start to form. Next time you hit a creative block, remind yourself that everyone goes through it. Creative people who are known for their success didn't achieve it by sitting back and waiting for ideas to appear. They took action, even when they didn't feel inspired. Chapter 2. The trap of perfectionism. Perfectionism can be a creative killer. It's that voice in your head that tells you that if something's not perfect, it's not worth doing at all. But that kind of thinking holds you back. Many creative minds waste time obsessing over tiny details, trying to make everything flawless. The truth is, perfection is an illusion. One of the most famous examples of perfectionism gone wrong is from writer J.K. Rowling. When she first wrote Harry Potter, she was rejected by multiple publishers. The manuscript wasn't perfect, but it was full of potential. Had she waited for the perfect version, we might never have had the magical world of Hogwarts. Research shows that perfectionism can lead to procrastination. A 2006 study found that people who are perfectionists tend to delay starting projects due to fear that they won't meet their own high standards. They feel trapped in a cycle of never finishing or even beginning their work. But here's the thing: creativity thrives in imperfection. Mistakes aren't the enemy, they're part of the creative process. As the famous quote goes, "Done is better than perfect." This is especially true for creative work. Perfecting your craft comes with time, and the only way to improve is to make mistakes along the way. It's better to get something out there and learn from it than to be paralyzed by fear of imperfection. If you find yourself stalling because you're afraid something isn't perfect, remind yourself that imperfection often leads to breakthroughs. In fact, some of the greatest innovations came from mistakes or unexpected accidents. For instance, the famous Post-it note was invented by accident when a 3M engineer tried to create a super strong adhesive but ended up with a weak one. It's now one of the most popular office products in the world. Let go of perfectionism. Instead, focus on the progress you're making. The more you practice and experiment, the closer you'll get to your best work. Remember, the road to creativity is paved with small, imperfect steps. Chapter 3. The silence of the inner critic. Every creative person has an inner critic. That voice that says, "This idea isn't good enough." It's that nagging thought that tells you that your work will never be as good as others. It can be paralyzing. In fact, research shows that 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at some point in their careers, feeling like they don't belong or aren't good enough despite evidence of their success. The inner critic is often louder than it needs to be. It feeds on fear and insecurity, and its goal is to protect you from failure. But in doing so, it keeps you from taking risks and experimenting. If you listen to it, you might never share your ideas with the world. But here's the thing. Your inner critic is not the voice of reason, it's the voice of fear. In her book Big Magic, author Elizabeth Gilbert talks about how she stopped letting her inner critic control her creativity. She gave that voice a seat at the table but refused to let it drive the car. This approach can help you silence your own critic. A good strategy for quieting the inner critic is to externalize the fear. When you're working on a project, remind yourself that it's okay if it's not perfect. Instead of thinking, "This isn't good enough," try thinking, "This is a step in the process, and I can improve it later." Another trick is to simply keep creating, no matter how you feel. Every time you make something, you get better at it. The more you push through your inner critic, the less power it has over time. The key is consistency. The more you create, the easier it gets to ignore those negative thoughts. In fact, most successful creative people have learned to embrace failure and feedback. Author and artist Ira Glass famously said, "All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. But there's a gap. And your taste is good enough that you can tell what you're making is not as good as you'd like it to be. But your taste is still good enough that you can tell what you're doing is good. And that's what drives you forward. Your inner critic won't disappear overnight. But by pushing through it and continuing to create, you'll start to realize that the voice of doubt has less power over time. You can quiet that fear by taking action, even if it's just one small step at a time. Chapter 4. Failure is the secret ingredient to success. Many creative minds fear failure, yet failure is one of the most important parts of success. It's easy to think that if you fail, you're done. But in reality, failure is where the magic happens. Think of it like this. Every mistake teaches you something new. The key is not to fear failure, but to learn from it and use it as a stepping stone. Take Thomas Edison, for example. He famously failed over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. But instead of seeing those failures as setbacks, he saw them as experiments. "I have not failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work," Edison said. His persistence paid off, and his willingness to embrace failure led to one of the most revolutionary inventions in history. Research backs this up. A 2017 study by the University of Melbourne showed that people who view failure as a learning experience tend to be more creative and resilient. Instead of getting discouraged, they use failure to improve their future work. Creative breakthroughs often come when we learn to pivot after a mistake, adjusting our approach based on the lessons failure provides. So, what does this mean for you? If you want to be truly creative, you have to be comfortable failing. Don't let the fear of making mistakes hold you back. Try new ideas, experiment, and allow yourself to fail forward. Creativity grows when we dare to take risks, knowing that failure doesn't mean the end. It's just part of the journey. In his book The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield emphasizes the importance of showing up to work every day, even if you're afraid. He says, "Resistance will tell you that you're not good enough, that you're wasting your time, and that your failures define you. But keep going. Embrace failure and let it guide you toward better solutions and more innovative ideas." Chapter 5. The power of playfulness in creativity. When we think of creativity, we often picture serious, focused work. But the truth is, creativity thrives in an environment of play. Playfulness is about allowing yourself to experiment, make mistakes, and have fun with the process. The best ideas often come when we aren't taking ourselves too seriously. Consider the world of improvisational comedy. Comedians often come up with their funniest material by going off script and letting their imagination run wild. The same principle applies to creativity in any field. When we let go of rigid structures and expectations, our minds become freer, and we start thinking outside the box. Psychologist Dr. Stuart Brown, in his book Play, How It Shapes the Brain, Opens the Imagination, and Invigorates the Soul, argues that play is essential for creativity. He explains that playful behavior can unlock new ideas by encouraging flexible thinking and risk-taking. When we play, we engage both sides of the brain, making it easier to connect seemingly unrelated ideas. One great way to bring play into your creative process is to try random exercises. Doodle without any end goal, free write for 5 minutes, or give yourself a random prompt. These activities help you tap into a playful, creative mindset. The less pressure you put on yourself, the more likely you are to generate unique and innovative ideas. The key is not to take yourself too seriously. Sometimes the best creative breakthroughs come from the most unexpected places. A playful attitude can lead you to more authentic, exciting, and novel ideas. In fact, many of the greatest inventions came from unexpected play. The slinky, for example, was invented when an engineer accidentally knocked a spring off a shelf and watched it bounce. So next time you're stuck in a creative rut, try stepping back and adding a playful twist to your approach. Let your imagination wander, and give yourself the freedom to fail without judgment. You'll be amazed at what you can create when you're not focused on perfection. Chapter 6. Breaking free from the fear of judgment. One of the biggest reasons people are afraid to fail is because they fear judgment. We worry about what others will think of our ideas, our work, and ourselves. But the truth is, most of us are so focused on our own insecurities that we overestimate the importance of others' opinions. The fear of judgment can paralyze us, preventing us from taking risks and sharing our work. Author Brené Brown, in her book Daring Greatly, explains that vulnerability is a key component of creativity. Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. When you create something, you open yourself up to judgment. But by embracing vulnerability, you learn to stop worrying about what others think and focus more on the process of creating. Statistics show that fear of judgment holds many people back. A 2016 study by the University of California found that nearly 40% of people don't pursue creative activities because they fear being judged. This fear keeps them from putting their work out there, even though it may have the potential to resonate with others. The truth is, judgment is inevitable. But that doesn't mean it should stop you from creating. In fact, many of the most successful artists, writers, and creators have faced criticism. It's how they responded to that judgment that made the difference. Instead of letting negativity stop them, they used it to fuel their growth. Another helpful technique is to share your work in small, supportive groups. Whether it's a group of friends, family, or a creative community, finding a space where you feel safe to share can help you overcome the fear of judgment. As you practice sharing, the fear will begin to lose its power over time. Ultimately, the key to breaking free from the fear of judgment is to realize that your creative journey is your own. Don't let the opinions of others dictate your progress. Keep creating, keep experimenting, and trust that your voice matters. As the artist Marie Forleo says, the world needs that special gift that only you have. Don't forget to subscribe for more tips on boosting your creativity and overcoming fear. Keep creating.